Hi everyone, my name is Cisca and welcome to my channel. On this channel, I share sewing tutorials, pattern tutorials, sewing tips, as well as sewing hacks. In today's video, I'll be showing you how to sew up your origami bamboo bodice pattern to create a very beautiful pleated looking bodice. So you need to stay tuned. And if you haven't watched the pattern tutorial, I'm going to put the link in my description box. You're going to see an eye that will pop up somewhere above this video. So go ahead and watch the pattern and then you can come and join us in the sewing, tutorial. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Please click the subscribe button, click the bell so you get updates when I post new videos. And now let's, go into the sewing tutorial. All you need to do now is to place this pattern that you have created, place it on your fabric, and then you're going to be adding seam allowances. So I'll just show you where to add your seam allowances. Here is the first bottom, right? So add your seam allowance, half an inch here. Right here is your side seam. Do you understand? So you can decide to go with half an inch seam allowance for your side seam or 1 inch. Here is your armhole, half an inch. Shoulder slope, half an inch. Here is your neckline, half an inch. Here is the second shoulder slope, okay? Right here is the second armhole. Add your half an inch seam allowance. Then you can go on to add your side seam allowance. This is your second side seam. And then right here is the other bottom. So add half an inch and then you're going to stop right here. Do you understand? Now, this method goes for when you are using just one color of fabric, okay? Go ahead and do all that I've explained. But if you are going to use 2 colors of fabric to create, this origami bamboo bodice pattern, this is what you need to do. The last dart that you created, which is this purple one right here, if you remember in my pattern making tutorial, this was the last one that I created and is usually, the first to fold. The last one you create is usually the first to fold, okay? So what you need to do is to go on to divide this dart into 2. So find the middle of the dart and cut it straight out. You're going to separate this into 2 pieces. And you can already see the crease that is right here, which is the middle of the dart. So I'll just go ahead and cut it. Now we have divided our pattern into 2. One will be for one color of fabric, the other will be for another color of fabric, okay? But when you are placing this on your different patterns, you need to indicate which one is your left or which one is your right. Do you understand? Because of how this pattern is facing me, this is actually my right and this is actually my left. So if I should turn it like this, which is, how I'm going to be wearing it, is going to be correct, okay? So I'll just go ahead and, label this right and left. So this is right and this is left. Do you understand what I'm saying? So you don't, have any mix up with your patterns. After you have done this now, please go on to label B for bottom, S for side seam, okay? A for armhole, SS for shoulder slope, and then N for neckline. Do you understand? And then go ahead and, repeat the same thing for this other side. And what we're going to do is label this neckline, SS shoulder slope, A for armhole, S for side seam, and then B for bottom, okay? So please go ahead and do that for yours. And also, you need to make sure that you place your pattern on the right side of your fabric before going ahead to cut. Do you understand? So I have, wrong side of pattern paper touching right side of fabric. So I'm going to place the right pattern, the one that I've labeled right. I'm going to place it on the black fabric, okay? And what I'm going to do next is to go on to place seam allowances all around this pattern. Do you understand? And you need to make sure that your pattern is placed on the right side of your fabric. This will help enable you to, fold your fabric properly, okay? So I placed it on top. I'll just go ahead and pin this down. You want to do that so your fabric doesn't move. So make sure to go ahead and pin your pattern down. And then I'm going to add half an inch seam allowance at my armhole. So I'm starting from the armhole, the part I labeled A. I'm adding half an inch seam allowance at my shoulder slope. I'm going to add about 1 inch at my side seam. So add about 1 to 1.5 inch for that. I'll add half an inch seam allowance at my neckline and also at the part where I cut my darts, okay? So you can see that I'm adding seam allowance right there. Then I'll come at the bottom of the pattern and then add 1/2 inch seam allowance as well. So once that is completed, all you need to do is to go ahead and cut out your pattern following the markings. Now, I hope you can realize that I did not add seam allowances where I have all those colored paper at the bottom. Don't add seam allowances there. You don't need seam allowances, okay? So once I finish now, I just go ahead and cut the bottom at the edge of the pattern. So can you see? And once that is completed, this is what I have, guys. This is what it looks like. The next thing I'm going to do is to go ahead and look for where I have complete dart legs from top to bottom. So can you see? The dart leg is extended from top to bottom. Now, this is very, very important because we are going to be notching the bottom of those darts, okay? And the reason why we are notching the bottom of those darts is so that we can fold, the blouse very, very well following those notches. Do you understand what I'm saying? So go ahead and notch it. And once I'm done with this right part, I'll go ahead and work on the left. I'm using a white fabric for this. So I just went ahead to place the pattern on the fabric, marked my seam allowances, and you see? So exactly what I did for the right is what I did for the left. So I've gone ahead to cut it out, and this is what it looks like. So where I have, complete dart legs from top to bottom, like I did for the black piece, is what I'm going to do for the white fabric. So I'll just go ahead and notch, all of them, same way I did on the black fabric, okay? And this part right here, I'm going to notch it. Once that is done now, what I need to do is just, show you guys how it's going to look. So I'm placing it on top of each other like this, so you can have an understanding of what we are doing. So can you see that everything aligns? So now that I've placed, the white fabric on the black fabric, I'll go ahead and notch where the two meet. This will enable us to, sew these pieces together. So I'm going to place the fabric, the white fabric, on top of the black fabric with right sides touching, okay? And the edge of the white fabric is meeting where I have the notch. And then I go ahead and sew with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So after sewing, this is what I have. And I'm going to, turn it to the right side. So you can see that it meets perfectly, okay? The next thing I'm going to do is to go ahead and remove my pattern so that we can begin folding. After removing the pattern, I went ahead to join it back together, okay? So that we can be able to use it in the folding of our fabric. Do you understand? So join it together and keep it, where it is visible for you. So this cut right here represents the seam that I have on my fabric. Do you understand? And we're going to be folding this first dart in this direction. So what is going to enable me fold this, first dart is the first notch I have here on the black fabric, as you can see. So I'll use that to fold the black fabric. Do you understand? And what I'm going to do is to go ahead and stitch that down by 1/4 inch. So I'll take it to my sewing machine and stitch. Do you understand? So in order to fold that on my fabric, I need to extend the cut I have here on the white fabric all the way to where I, folded, where the black fabric fold is. Do you understand? So this is how it's going to look on your pattern. This is how it's going to look on the fabric. Now we're going to go ahead and fold the second one over like this. So did you see that? Now I made a cut to extend to where this black parts end. I made a cut from here to there. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and fold it over, and then I'm going to take this to my sewing machine now and then stitch this part down to hold it in place, okay? So after stitching this down, this is what I have. Now, by the time I open it up, it's going to look like this. So the next notch that I have is what is going to form our pleats. So I just folded it by that notch I created and placed it down. Before we go ahead and stitch this part, you will notice that I have a cut on this yellow one here, which is the next one that we are going to fold. So what I'm going to do is now extend that cut on the black fabric to where I have the folded part of this white fabric, okay? So I'm just going to grab my scissors now and make that cut. So did you see that? Now that I have made the cuts, what we want to do next is to go ahead and fold this one. Can you see what I'm doing? We're going to go ahead and fold it like this. So you can see that I've covered the yellow parts. I'll go ahead now and fold it over. And I'm going to fold it over using the next notch, okay? So remember your notches that we created earlier. So I'll just go ahead and fold it over using the next notch. After folding it over, I'm going to grab my fabric like this, turn it over to the back. So I'm going to sew from the cut part now all the way to this part here, okay? So I'll sew from the cut part all the way to this point. So guys, after sewing this next part down, this is what we have, right? So I'm going to flip my fabric to the other side. Now, the next notch on my black fabric, I'm just going to, fold that part and let it rest on the white fabric, okay? So did you see that? The next thing I'm going to do is now extend the cuts I have right here on my white fabric to where this folded part of the black fabric ends. So I'll just grab my fabric scissors now and, make that cut, okay? So I'll just go ahead and do that. Now that you have done this, we want to fold this white part now. And this part that we're folding next is this orange part, okay? So I'm just going to fold the orange part now over like this, and then I'm going to tape it down. The next thing I'm going to do now is to go ahead and fold my white fabric over. And I'm going to take this to my sewing machine now and stitch this cut that I have here. Do you understand? I'm going to stitch this down from this part that I cut all the way to this point here, okay? Straight down. Making sure that the notch on the black fabric is at the edge of the white fabric that you cut. Is at that cut part. So I'll take this to my sewing machine now and sew this down. Now that I've sewn this part, I'm just going to turn my fabric like this, and the next thing I'm going to do is to create the fold, which is this orange one here, okay? So I'm just going to go ahead and create the fold. Now I go back to my notch again, fold the notch part like this. So can you see what I'm doing? And then I'm going to let it lay nicely on the black fabric such that this cut on the white fabric matches with this cut on the black fabric, okay? So I just make sure I place it side by side. Do you understand? So I'm going to go ahead now and make a cut on the black fabric. I'll be extending this line or this cut all the way to the folded part on the white fabric, okay? Do you understand? And then what I'm going to do is place the black fabric over it like this, and then I'll take this to my sewing machine and stitch from the open part of the fabric, stitch from that point all the way down to this point, okay? So guys, after sewing this up, this is what I have, okay? So the next thing we want to do is to go ahead and fold this part over, because that's the next part that we are going to fold. So just to show you the step-by-step process, okay? So I'll just go ahead, place it like this, and then tape it down. So did you see that? Now the notched part on this black fabric, that's the next notch part, is what I'm going to fold, and I'm going to make sure that it's rests nicely on this white fabric, ensuring that the cut on the black side aligns with this cut on the white side, okay? Very, very important. And the next thing I'm going to do is to go ahead and, extend this cut that I have on the white fabric. I'll extend it all the way to the fold on the black fabric. So just watch what I'm doing, okay? So once I do that now, I'll just go ahead and place this on top. Do you understand? Making sure that the notch part on this black fabric is at the edge of the cut we made on the white fabric, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and stitch it down with a 1/4 of an inch, allowance to hold it down before we do our next fold. So guys, after sewing this down, this is what it looks like. So what I'm going to do is to just bring the white fabric out like this. So the next fold that we are going to create is this blue one that we have here. So I'm just going to go ahead and fold that over like this and tape this down, okay? So since that is the next part that we are folding and it is on the right side, I'm going to grab the next notch now, and I'm going to make sure I place it in such a way that it rests nice and flat on the black fabric, okay? I hope you are seeing what I am doing. And once I do that, I'll go ahead now and extend the cut that I have here all the way to where the folded part of this fabric that my hand is on all the way to where it ends. And once that is done, I'll just go ahead, get my black fabric, cover it like this, okay? And then I'll take this to my sewing machine and stitch this close down from where I cut all the way to the bottom here, okay? So I'll just take this to my sewing machine now and stitch it down to this point. So guys, after sewing this part down, I'm just going to go ahead and flip it like this. So the part that I just sewed is this, yellow part that we have here. What I'm going to do is to go ahead and grab the next notch, which is on my black fabric. And that next notch is this part right here. So I'll just go ahead and, place it on top like this. Just match it like that and tape it down, okay? So as I've done it like that, I'll just grab the notch, ensure that it, rests nicely on the white fabric, okay? And what I'm going to do next is to go ahead and extend the cuts that I have here. I will extend it to, where the folded part of the black fabric ends, okay? So I'll just grab my scissors now and make that cut, okay? And then I'll place it over, and then I'll take this to my sewing machine and stitch from where I made that cut, all the way to this point here, okay? So can you see all the way to this point here? So I'll just go ahead and do that. So after stitching this down, this is what it looks like, okay? So I'll just flip it to the right side now. And the next thing we are going to do is to go on to do the next fold, which is the next notch. So this is it right here. I'll just go ahead and fold it over like this, and then I'll tape it down. So this helps you to know the direction in which you are, going to fold your fabric. So now that that is done, I'll get my fabric now, grab the next notch, which is right here. And then I'm just going to let it, lay nicely on the black fabric, okay? Do you understand? The next thing I'm going to do is to go ahead and extend the cut on my black fabric to where, the white fold ends. So I'll just go ahead and make that cut now. So once this is done, I'm just going to put this black fabric over it like this. And then I'll take this to my sewing machine and sew from where I made that cut all the way to the bottom, okay? So I'll just go ahead and do that now. So guys, after sewing it down, this is what I have, okay? And what I'm going to do is to turn it over to this side. Now we want to fold the last bit, which is this one right here. So what I need to do is to go ahead and, fold the pattern over like this, as usual. This, do you understand? And then I'm going to tape it down. The next thing I'm going to do is to grab the next notch, which is right here. I have another notch here, so I'll just go ahead and match the notches together. So once I match the notches together, what I'm going to do now is take this to my sewing machine, and I'm going to stitch this down like this, okay? So let me show you from this other side. So I'll take this to my sewing machine and stitch, from where the white fabric is all the way to where the fold ends. So after sewing, guys, this is what I have. This is what the front bodice looks like. This is what the back looks like. So you can see all the rough, edges around here. What this means is that you are going to have to, line this type of bodice and, just cut your normal bodice pattern with waist darts and use it to line this, okay? That's pretty simple. So now that we have all our, stitches joined together, the next bit is, ensuring that your pleats, are arranged nicely, okay? So using your pattern that we have folded in the sew along video, all you need to do is to just, match it pleat for pleat on each side. Do you understand? So where your pleat ends, just look for that place and then just, match it on the fabric, and then go ahead and, press it down really well. That's it for this origami bamboo bodice pattern. So if you have any questions, you can ask me in the comment section. I will, you know, respond as soon as possible. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, kindly give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, turn on the bell so you get updates when I post new videos, and I'll be seeing you in my next tutorial. Bye.